Jameer Nelson's college career is a study in contrast. He may have been small, but he played big. He may have been young, but he had the wisdom of a veteran floor general. And although he always put his team first, that didn't stop him from collecting a laundry list of individual awards, especially in his senior season when, for a moment, the little guy from Little St. Joe's was the biggest college basketball star in the country. This episode of Wooden Award Spotlight is presented by Principal. Philadelphia, stand up. Jameer Nelson is the definition of a hometown hero, but not even he could have pictured how his loyalty would lead to the greatest season in school history. Before he became a Philly phenom, he was a kid from Chester, Pennsylvania, who was overlooked by recruiters despite leading Chester High to a state championship his senior season. Standing just over 6 feet tall in sneakers, Nelson's size kept high major programs away. Even Atlantic 10 schools like Temple didn't offer him a chance at starting. But St. Joseph's head coach Phil Martelli saw right through all the doubt and had immediate confidence that Nelson would be the leader of his program for years to come.
First time that I ever saw him play, he was the absolute consummate point guard. The only reason he plays basketball is to win. I felt strongly when he said that he was coming to St. Joe's that for the next 4 years, when we lined up their team against our team, that we would be ahead at point guard for 4 years.
Jameer wasted no time in proving his coach to be a visionary. He had an effective freshman season, averaging 12.5 points on 46% shooting, 6.5 assists, and 4 rebounds per game. Playing Robin to junior star Marvin O'Connor's Batman, Nelson showcased his poise and a maturity well beyond his years. Coach Martelli characterized his seasoned approach to the game by saying, from the neck up, he's like 75 years old. The Hawks went 24-5 in the regular season, and Nelson swept National Freshman of the Year honors. After logging 3 seasons under 500, St. Joe's returned to the NCAA tournament where they fought past Georgia Tech before losing a close game to number 1 seed Stanford in the second round. Nelson's scoring ticked up as a sophomore, but it was an overall disappointing season for the Hawks. After entering the 2001-2002 season ranked 10th in the preseason AP poll, they dropped out of the rankings before the end of December, finished the year 19-12, and were blown out in the second round of the NIT.
Jameer got a lot of knocks that he had a sophomore slump, and I think that was an easy target. But really, he shot a higher percentage, he averaged more points, he averaged more assists. Basically what happened was we had 4 fifth-year seniors who were nervous about the future. There was a lot of pressure on all those individual guys, and here was this young guy, this sophomore, kind of trying to piece it together. He ended up first team All-Atlantic 10 as a sophomore in a year where he supposedly slumped.
In Nelson's junior year, team dynamics took a turn. As the only sophomore in a starting lineup full of seniors the previous season, Nelson was now an upperclassman and the definitive leader of the team.
The Jameer Nelson Show, that's all you need to know. Step back three. Great look by Nelson. What a look by Jameer Nelson.
There's a reason he's a Player of the Year candidate.
It's been all Jameer Nelson and the St. Joseph's Hawks.
The void left by O'Connor's graduation was filled by Nelson's new starting backcourt mate, sophomore Delonte West. Together they would guide the Hawks to a 23-7 season, with Nelson and West leading the team in scoring at 19.7 and 17.3 points per game, respectively.
Jameer Nelson and his backcourt mate, Delonte West. How about the Nelson to West combination?
Those two guys look for one another.
One of the most closely watched backcourts in the U.S.
The turnaround landed St. Joe's a matchup with 10-seed Auburn in the NCAA tourney. The Hawks suffered a 65-63 overtime loss in that game, but it was clear they had returned to form as a competitive mid-major. That season also yielded Nelson a notable increase in national attention. He was named to the All-A10 First Team, A10 All-Defensive Team, and All-American Third Team by ESPN.com. All that success at the college level and his young son, Jameer Nelson Jr., meant that declaring for the NBA draft was the reasonable next step, or at least it seemed that way. Jameer traveled to a pre-draft camp in Chicago to take inventory of his draft stock while maintaining his college eligibility. Although Jameer showed out, he was the shortest of the top point guard prospects, and teams showed concern about how his lack of size would translate to the next level. He had certainly made the case that he was NBA ready, just not ready enough to be a guaranteed first-round selection, let alone a lottery pick, a difference that would result in missing out on millions of dollars in rookie contract earnings. Nelson weighed his options, but ultimately decided to return to St. Joe's with a chip on his shoulder. That decision would lead to the single greatest season in program history. All eyes were on Jameer for the upcoming season. A statement so true, he got it tatted on his back. He was determined to leave no doubt about his ability to play in the pros. And you couldn't help but feel sorry for any team that had the Hawks on their schedule that season. Coming into the year ranked 17th, St. Joe's started the 2003-2004 season with a statement win over 10th-ranked Gonzaga, 73-66 in Madison Square Garden.
How about that? Think Jameer Nelson is happy he came back for one more year at college right now?
What better way for Nelson to start his revenge tour than to show out on the biggest NBA stage? He flirted with a triple-double, putting up 20 points, 10 assists, and 8 rebounds. It was a tone-setting performance for the team's season-long climb to number 1 in the country. The Hawks outscored their opponents by 75 points to start 6-0 as Nelson became St. Joe's leader in career assists. After downing the Drexel Dragons by 22 behind Nelson's 24 points, 7 assists, and 5 steals, the Hawks would see their growing immortality threatened against Cal. The Golden Bears just wouldn't go down in the wake of St. Joe's aspirations for an historic season. But Nelson would eventually take advantage of the opportunity to showcase his clutch gene in the final seconds.
Nelson moves with under 8. Takes the shot himself. Nelson gives St. Joe's the lead with 4.3.
You know, this is death. You got the best point guard maybe in the country, driving the ball, back pedal, nothing but net. Big players make big plays.
If you knew nothing about St. Joe's going into this season, you were about to become real familiar because they just kept winning. They were a nationwide sensation in large part thanks to number 14, but also because of their media-friendly head coach. In addition to Coach Martelli holding open practices, he also hosted his own offbeat on-campus TV show called Hawk Talk.
Welcome to Hawk Talk. Many said that we wouldn't last 7 shows. Many were right and should have been right. This one has a gravy stain on it.
Martelli's 2 L's, right? You're on the naughty list, pal.
Thank you very much, Candy Breath. This year I look good doing a lot of things, though, buddy. Believe me.
Martelli made sure the whole country was tuned in to Little St. Joe's historic run. And you couldn't help but root for them unless, of course, you were on the opposite bench. They cracked the AP Top 10 in early January ahead of their 12th win against Richmond, which saw Nelson drop 32 points on the road. The Hawks' next 4 wins propelled them to 3rd before their meeting with conference foe St. Bonaventure. What were normally blow-for-blow slugfests between the bitter rivals turned out to be a wire-to-wire domination from the Hawks, punctuated by a perfect game from Nelson and a 114-63 victory over the Bonnies. He went 6 for 6 from the field, including 4 for 4 from distance, to put up 19 points to go along with 6 assists. As the Hawks kept stacking W's, Jameer's draft stock continued to rise, and the rumblings of who the best player in the country was became impossible to ignore. In the midst of all the noise, the spotlight, and personal security guard, Nelson continued to lead the team in points and assists while consistently reminding opponents how much of a pest he could be on the defensive end. Think about where this story started. Fast forward, and Jameer was gracing the cover of Sports Illustrated, and St. Joe's was ranked number 1 in the country. The Hawks had captured the once improbable and at times threatened perfect regular season, led by none other than their star point guard, who averaged 20.6 points, 5.3 assists, and 4.7 rebounds per game. They didn't get to celebrate for long, losing their first game of the A-10 tournament 87-67 to Xavier, in a game they trailed by as many as 37. But it didn't cost them the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They proved their momentary fall from grace was a blip by making the Elite Eight behind their high-powered guards. In an all-time classic versus Oklahoma State, Nelson had a look at sending it to overtime with a second to go, but missed. Despite the absence of a happy ending for the Hawks, there was a silver lining. March and April brought an onslaught of trophies and honors for Jameer. None were more coveted or important to him than winning the Wooden Award. Nelson just barely edged out UConn's Emeka Okafor by 193 points in the vote, one of the closest since the award was first handed out in 1977. It was an appropriate bookend for Nelson's college career. All season long, his ascendancy was questioned and debated, despite his game making the case every time he stepped on the floor. But if you ask the man himself, he'd be the first to tell you that he preferred it that way.
I believe I can play with anybody in the world. But at the same time, you have basketball critics who are going to judge people and rank people. You know, wherever they rank me at is fine with me. You know, if they rank me number 1 or number 100, it doesn't matter to me because I'm still going to go out there and play my heart out.
That's the theme of what Nelson brings to the table. He punched above his weight, but wasn't the type to brag about his knockouts. Although he's the most decorated player in St. Joe's history, winning always meant more to him than accolades, and he contributed to plenty of it in the NBA. He went on to be the 20th pick in 2004, carved out a 14-year career, and made the All-Star team in 2009. That same year, he returned from what was called a season-ending shoulder injury to play in the NBA Finals. He's the epitome of resilience and grit, a trait reflected in the tradition of his alma mater's mascot, the hawk that never stops flapping its wings until the final buzzer sounds. These days, Jameer is busy helping guide a franchise back to glory as an assistant general manager, naturally with his hometown 76ers, because no one knows about trusting the process more than Jameer Nelson. This episode of Wooden Award Spotlight is presented by Principal, proud sponsor of the 2026 John R. Wooden Player of the Year.